Hello and welcome to this episode of Health and You. Diabetes, as we know, has emerged as a major health challenge in India, and there is evidence to show that the country now has over 10 crore diabetics. While access to treatment for all who need managed diabetes is a challenge, the treatment options available for the condition are also fast evolving. To discuss this, we have two very illustrious guests today. We have Dr. V. Mohan, a senior diabetologist and researcher, and Dr. A. Sharda, who is attached with Manipal Hospital in Bangalore. Thank you so much, Dr. Mohan and Dr. Sharda, for joining us. So we'll
Thank you.
start by asking Dr. Mohan, what has the traditional management of diabetes been like, and how has it evolved over the last few decades?
A lot of changes. Thank you for that question. I'm happy to be part of this program. Over the last 2 or 3 decades, a lot of changes have come in treatment of diabetes. And I can say this because I've been around for almost 4 or 5 decades now. So, when we started maybe in the 1970s and so on, we had only two drugs, the sulfonylurea drugs. We're talking about type 2 diabetes now. So we have only the sulfonylurea drugs and biguanides. Most of the time we used to have metformin, and later metformin came. And as far as monitoring was concerned, we had to use urine glucose testing at those days. The blood glucose testing, the meters itself came much later. We did
Right.
not have the 3 months average HbA1c test. Today we have some 7 or 8 classes of drugs, oral drugs. Apart from that, lot of changes in insulin has come. The way we test for diabetes has changed completely now. We have continuous glucose monitoring where you just put a patch on the hand and continuously reads the blood glucose, like a video recording of all the blood glucose. So many changes have occurred in the last 3 decades or so.
Yeah. Dr. Sharda, can you please help us understand what are the new treatment options that patients can now benefit for diabetes in India?
So, like Dr. Mohan said, we have moved from a very poor armamentarium with 2, 3 drugs to many, many drugs, and we are spoilt for choice. So, basically, we are doing an individualized approach to each patient now with diabetes, and from glucose centric approach, which was prevalent for the first 3 decades. Now, in the last 2 decades, we have come to a very much risk assessment and established disease oriented approach in a patient with diabetes. So these new drugs, some have been in the play for about a decade, like SGLT2 inhibitors, and that is the medicine which changed the approach. Each medicine, as you see, is evaluated for cardiovascular safety from 2008 onwards as per FDA requirement. So when they did the SGLT2 inhibitors, that is the class of drug like dapagliflozin, canagliflozin, they found that it was highly beneficial in reducing hospitalizations for heart failure. So the newer drugs are, which have been around for a decade, is SGLT2 inhibitors. Now we have the GLP-1 receptor analogs. This was first one when the group was called liraglutide. This was an injectable one. It has been also around for more than 1.5 decades in clinical use in India, but very poor takers because it was a daily injection. So people
Right.
used to think I am on some sort of insulin, quote unquote. But it
Mhm.
was not insulin. It was a GLP-1 receptor analog. GLP-1 is also one of the hormones secreted from the pancreas, and it has multiple benefits, like I said, apart from glycemic control or blood glucose control. And
Okay.
it helps us to reduce the cardiovascular events and kidney problems and many more things we will discuss in the next couple of questions. So, what is new in this molecule or the class is the availability of the oral GLP-1 receptor analog. It is called semaglutide, and the subcutaneous one has been released much earlier, about couple of years ago, but it is not available yet in India, the subcutaneous semaglutide. The oral one has been around for more than a year, and there are multiple takers for this oral
Yeah.
semaglutide.
I
That
think
is
oral
called peptide
semaglutide is
insulin.
available under the brand name of Ribelsus in India, and there are a
Yes,
lot of
yes.
people using it.
Generally, we don't refer to brand names as doctors in any talk. I'm very glad you told. So it is called oral semaglutide Ribelsus. See, that is called a miracle, medical miracle. Why? Because this is a peptide in a pill. You know why insulin has to be taken as injection? Because it is a peptide. If you take it orally, the gastric acid and juices will destroy it. And it cannot be useful, it cannot be absorbed into the body to act. But this GLP-1 receptor analog, although it is a peptide, it has been made into a tablet, which is orally
Yeah.
absorbed. And that is why it is called peptide in a pill and a medical miracle. And there are a lot of other drugs. This is called GLP-1 receptor analog. The other one, which has been released quite recently and is nearing approval by the DCGI also in our country, is called tirzepatide. It is a dual
Right.
GIP and GLP-1 receptor analog. So this has more effective in glycemic control. That is, the average HbA1c reduction is more than 2%. And also the weight reduction is extraordinary, so much so that it has been approved last November 2023 for use in obesity without diabetes. Although this was first investigated as a drug for diabetes. So these are the three very interesting drugs which are available to us for use in our country as well. The terzepatide, which is called Munjaro, that is the dual
Mhm.
receptor and agonist, which I said DCGI has nearly approved, and that will also be available quite soon. And the
Yeah.
semaglutide, which is subcutaneous in higher dose of 2.4 milligrams, that also is very, very effective in diabetes control and weight control. Like I said, the glucose-centric approach has disappeared. The newer drugs approach the problem correctly, metabolically, by looking at obesity, that is weight control, as well as sugar control, and to reduce the cardiovascular death and morbidity. Because see, nobody dies just of diabetes, no madam. People die because of the cardiovascular causes
Right.
mostly
Right.
and kidney causes. And these newer drugs are effective in reducing the kidney and the cardiovascular problems as well.
Yeah. So you mentioned about some devices, medical devices like CGM also being used for managing diabetes nowadays. So can everybody use it? Please elaborate more on these devices, and who can use it, who can benefit from it.
Thank you for the question. I think CGM or continuous glucose monitoring sensors can actually be used by anyone with diabetes. Now, you may ask, what is the difference between doing a blood test in a lab and doing a blood test with a glucose meter, which at home we do, and this continuous glucose monitoring?
Right.
Now, in the lab, we go once in a month, once in 2 months, 3 months, and get some tests done, some glucose test or some 3 months average test. That's why you go to the lab. Now, when you do in the house with the glucose meter reading, there you are able to do at different times of the day. You can check it maybe fasting and maybe after lunch. Also, you will get snapshots of the sugar, what it was in the morning, maybe what it was in the afternoon, what it was in the night. If each time you have to poke and you have to get a drop of blood, so it's painful, and then you get that minute what that blood sugar is, you're able to save, but you're not able to fill up the gaps. For example, suppose it was low in the morning and it is
Mhm.
high in the lunch. Then the question will come: was it high throughout? When did it go high? When did it come down? When did so that for that you need something like a video recording. So the first one that I said is like taking multiple still photographs. Suppose I take now one still photograph of three of us. You will get one picture now, isn't it? Whereas if you're recording this now, every word that we say, everything gets recorded in a video recording. So similarly, in the continuous glucose monitoring, you know the trends of the sugar. Morning, how it was. In the night, it actually goes down. Then by after 4 o'clock, it will start rising. Around 10, it reaches a peak after breakfast. Then again, it drops by lunchtime. Then again, after lunch, it goes up. So we are for the first time able to understand the blood sugar profiles throughout the day. Now, in those with type 1 diabetes, those who are taking 3 times, 4 times insulin, this is like a game changer. This is like a life-saving thing because they're able to see every glucose level, and you don't even need to poke. All you need is to have a reader like thing, or even nowadays it comes on the phone also. So you just look at your phone and say, oh, my blood sugar is going low. It's time for me to eat now. So you can go and adjust your timing of food, your exercise, what you eat, all that you can look at the trend and say, oh my God, after breakfast it went up. Maybe I shouldn't have had that one extra idli which I
Yeah.
took. Tomorrow I'll try with one idli less and see how much it comes down. So this is the kind of advantage that you get with continuous glucose monitoring. In the case of type 1 diabetes, as I said, every insulin, you see the blood sugar and then you decide how much to take. In the case of type 2, we don't need, especially those who are not on insulin injection. Type 2 also, some of them can be on insulin injection. You don't need continuous reading of this throughout, because type 1, they wear it throughout. Maybe the 365 days also they're wearing it. Abroad, virtually no type 1 is treated without a continuous glucose monitoring fixed on the arm throughout throughout the year. In the case of type 2 diabetes, we call it as intermittent use of CGM. So we can use it maybe when you're starting the treatment. You can give it to see whether your treatment has responded for the first 2 weeks. Then maybe for 1 or 2 months we won't do it. Then after 6 months we may add another tablet when sugar is high. Then you can put it again. So we call this as intermittent use of CGM. There's another place where this CGM is very important, and that's during pregnancy. When you have gestational diabetes during pregnancy, we want very tight control. We want the sugars absolutely under control. So to make sure that every blood glucose throughout the day is under control, you can do it without a single poke of blood glucose. You can do it with a continuous glucose monitor.
So when one chooses particular CGM, are there some specifications that one should keep in mind, or because there's so many options available in the market?
Yeah, so there are 2-3 companies which are producing CGM. So I don't want to mention the companies, but some of them are a little more user friendly.
Okay.
They may not be that accurate, but they are very user friendly and therefore they're very popular. Some others are a little more accurate, but some of them are quite expensive. So in India, we don't have too much of choice. We have only 1 or 2 companies which are making it. Whereas in the United States, for example, there are 3-4 companies which make it, and each one you have a choice now of which one you need to use. Similarly, we didn't talk about when talk about devices. One more thing you should mention is not just to check your glucose level that you have devices, especially for those who are on insulin dependent type 1 patients. You also have pumps today. So these pumps earlier, they've also evolved. The earlier pumps used to just deliver the insulin. Instead of poking yourself 3-4 times a day, the pump will deliver the insulin. At the time of meal, you press a button and then you will get more insulin as you need. So all those pricks that you used to do 3-4 times a day went away. But then the pumps got better and better. What used to happen earlier was that the pump will keep on delivering insulin. Even if you're getting low sugar, the pump doesn't know and used to keep on delivering insulin. Then they built in sensors along with the pump. So if the sugars went low, the pump will switch off. So you won't get low sugar. So that is sensor augmented pump. The next stage which we have today, and they've all come into the Indian market, we're using it. It's called as a closed loop, artificial hybrid closed loop system. With these are almost like an automatic, like an artificial pancreas. So the pump decides what is your blood sugar. It decides how much insulin to give. You can put a filter and say below 100, I don't want blood sugar to go. That patient will never get a low sugar reaction. Okay. Similarly, if you put a higher limit and say, I don't want the blood sugar to go above a particular limit, that means within that narrow range of preventing low sugar and preventing high sugar, the glucoses are maintained throughout like a straight line. All these were impossible in somebody with type 1 diabetes even 2 or 3 years ago. Sugars would go up and down, up and down. They'll get low sugar, high sugar, low sugar, high sugar. They're always worried. They're always paranoid. Oh, when am I going to get the next low sugar?
Yeah.
After these pumps have come, it has completely revolutionized the treatment because your patient will not get low sugar at all. And the time in range, the time that you want between a low and the high, say 70 to 180 or 70 to 140, whatever you set it at, it will remain within that. So the control of type 1 diabetes has completely changed after these closed loop hybrid systems have come, but they are expensive. So not everybody can afford it. In the UK, for example, now the government has decided to give it free to everyone with type 1 diabetes. In our country, we still have to pay for it, and therefore insurance is also not paying. So we'll have to find those who can afford, they can use it. But those who can't afford, we'll have to see how to support them. Can charity support? Can government support? But things have come now. which we did not have 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, Dr. Sharda, we discussed a lot about the treatment, new treatment or drugs which are available for type 2 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes, Dr. Mohan just told us how pumps have come in a big way for these kind of patients now. Are there some new drugs also, or at least, at least in the pipeline, which can be there in the future for type 1 diabetes patients specifically?
Yeah, see, type 1 is a very different cup of tea. What happens is they have already lost all their insulin, almost nil insulin by the time they get diagnosed. The
Okay.
new excitements which are in the pipeline for type 1 diabetes is more to do with preventing the type 1 diabetes if possible in the siblings of people children with diabetes. So you
Okay.
pick them up by screening these siblings and those who are at high risk. There are, how do people get type 1 diabetes? There is no family history, there is
There's
no
so many breakthrough therapies which are coming in, for instance, gene therapy, which is coming. I was
history.
reading that in the UK some research is already happening for type 1
Absolutely.
diabetes. Yeah.
So what happens is Australia, JDRF, US, all these things have been researching on two, three things. Number one, how to make the insulin oral, because that will
Okay.
make a big difference. One
Mm-hmm.
thing which is already available in US and all is the inhaled insulin, which is actually a prandial insulin. That means bolus insulin. For food they can take 3 times a day. They can take inhaled insulin, and they don't prick then. Apart from the pump, see, the good pump is around 5 lakh rupees. So not everybody can buy it, and even some insurances in US also will not cover for it. So you
Mm-hmm.
have the inhaled insulin, which is relatively new treatment, which is not yet available in India. But you take a basal insulin, and along with that, you take an inhaled insulin. Another thing is the islet cell. See what happens, in the pancreas there is a lot of work for the pancreas. It makes a lot of digestive juices, to say in a layman term, for
Mm-hmm.
protein digestion, fat digestion, carbohydrate digestion, amylase, lipase, everything, and trypsin. So what happens in the end of the pancreas, that is called the tail, that has got lot of endocrine cells, hormone producing cells. These will release their secretions directly without a duct into the blood. One of them is insulin, the other one is glucagon, all these things. So this insulin, it's called an islet. It's like an island of beta cells in the big pancreas, in the towards the tail. So instead of putting the entire pancreas as a transplant, nowadays what is new is the islet cell transplant itself. So that is
Okay.
less of a problem, less complicated than pancreas transplant. Even in India, we can do that, is not at all a problem. And mostly these transplants are done along with the kidney transplant. When a person with type 1 diabetes develops a diabetes related kidney disease and kidney failure, when you are ready to transplant one kidney, you also try to transplant the pancreas, so they become diabetes free, because there is beta cells which produce the insulin, and you have given a new kidney which will do the job of the kidneys which have failed. Why you cannot generally prefer only pancreas transplant in children with diabetes, type 1 diabetes? There are two, three restrictions, to put it in a common man's language. One is, any transplant you do, you need to put them on immunosuppressants like steroids and tacrolimus and all that. So what happens, these immunosuppressant drugs have their own side effects. They get more prone to infections, and if they get infection, they have difficulty in having immunity to come out of it, and so many things. And if they forget the immunosuppressant drug, the organ is destroyed. See, during COVID time, you will be very shocked to hear, madam, how many patients lost their kidney because the drugs were not available. There was a
Correct.
sudden lockdown. So if you
Mm-hmm.
don't get your tacrolimus, don't get your steroids, people have searched and not got their supplies, and they have actually landed up not having their kidneys, transplanted kidneys, working anymore. So this is not a joke. That is an extreme case, what I'm telling as an example.
Mm-hmm.
But if a patient forgets the immunosuppressant drugs, what we transplant, any organ, whether it is the pancreas or whether it is the kidneys, the heart, it's anything, it is going to lose, because the body will tend to destroy anything new which has been put. You
Yeah.
understood? So the
Yeah.
islet cell transplant is a way to go ahead, and I hope I'm sure Dr. Mohan also will agree that that should be the step ahead for children with diabetes, to put them back, give them back the insulin, which makes a huge difference to them. And other drugs are also being done. And what is very exciting for me is the new drugs which will tend to prevent or postpone the onset of diabetes in children. That is the new kid in the game.
Yeah.
Postpone and prevent
Very, very
type 1
useful
diabetes.
information there, ma'am.
Yes, and that is best, no, to prevent the
Yeah,
problem
yes,
itself.
absolutely, absolutely. Ma'am, one thing that our viewers would really benefit from understanding is, we keep hearing about diabetes reversal or diabetes remission, actually, to say it correctly. So we would like to hear from both of you on this. How does it work, in which kind of patients, and, when is the time to go for this kind of therapy?
Very, very important question, because I have seen good and bad. Always there is good and bad of anything. The first thing is, it is the name reversal is a misnomer. What
Right.
you achieve is a remission. That means this person who is genetically predisposed due to family history, due to age, due to obesity. Now, what happens? He has done a lifestyle measure in the form of very good diet, in the form of very good activity, and there are a lot of platforms, and it's a big business. We do reversal, we do reversal, we do better. What happens?
There are many startups
Ultimately,
offering just diabetes reversal.
absolutely, madam. And each will claim I'm better than the other in the internet, if you see. And the patients get extremely confused. First of all, it is not reversal, it is a remission. Second of all, what is the bottom line? Bottom line is you need to lose 10 to 20, 15%, let us say, of your body weight. So, who is the candidate? The candidate is a person who is at least 10 to 15% overweight, man. They have to
Okay.
be obese by 10 to 15% to lose that weight. So, if you
Mhm.
lose that weight, your insulin works better. See, what is the type 2 diabetes? We are not talking about type 1 at all in reversal. Type 1 is an insulin deficient state. Okay? The type 2 only is what is a candidate for reversal or remission. So, if they lose 10% or 15% of their body weight, their sugars, which were high, will come down to normal. That is called remission. Why? Because there is a relative insulin deficiency in type 2 diabetes. That means there is a lot of insulin resistance. What does resistance mean? If this much insulin can do this much work, if you need more insulin to do the same amount of work, in a very simplistic manner, I'm talking, that is called insulin resistance, needing more insulin to deliver the same amount of work. What is the work that insulin does in a very basic way? It is to control the glucose. It is to enable the glucose from blood to enter the cells so that it can be used for fuel purposes, energy purposes. So, without the presence of insulin, the sugar is unable to enter the cells. This insulin is like a key. It opens the cell for the sugar to enter from the blood into the cell. So
Right.
if the insulin resistance is there, then you need more insulin to do that work in a simple
Yeah.
manner. So when you lose 10 to 15% of your weight, by whichever diet, from whichever platform, whichever type of mayurasan, this asan, that asan, and this cardio, that cardio, you are losing the weight. So the existing insulin works better. The insulin resistance comes down. So
Yeah.
these people can be in remission for many years. But like I said, these people need to be under surveillance, because if they put back the weight, because you can't be on that startup diet forever. Nobody
Mm.
can be, because they will get fatigued and they will go back to some sort of diet of their own, or the
Phone.
previous diet, which is very common, I think, sir, with 4 decades of practice, me with 30 plus years of practice, we have all seen. We'll teach them. After some time, they will go back to what they were doing very gradually. Again, after 3, 4 months, we will motivate them. Again, they will come back. So even in remission, the same thing will happen. If they put back the weight, or if they get older and their insulin reserve itself from the pancreas comes down, they will still become diabetic after 5 years, 10 years, and so on. So it is not a reversal forever. It is a remission achieved through very good 10 to 15% weight loss.
Yeah, Dr. Mohan, you also want to add something, please, and also tell us, of maybe 100 diabetes patients, how many do you think can qualify for, or are eligible, or can try for diabetes remission?
Thank you.
Don't need
So,
drugs.
Sharda has very clearly said that it's not for those with type 1. It's because there's absolute insulin deficiency. If you don't give them insulin, they'll die. So, it's only for type 2. Now, in type 2, I would talk about the A, B, C, D, E mantra to remember who will go in for remission. If you add all these A, B, C, D also, it will only come to about 5% of people. 95% still cannot achieve remission. So, who is this A, B, C, D, E? A stands for A1C. If your A1C is not very high, okay, so we want it at 5.6 is normal, 6.5 and above is diabetes. Suppose they have 7.5, 8. They are more likely to go into remission than if they have 10 or 11. So the lower the A1C, the better the chance of remission. B stands for body weight. That Dr. Sharda has clearly said that unless you're overweight, what are you going to lose? If you're already very thin, how are you going to achieve remission? You cannot. So you have to have B. So B stands for BMI or body mass index or body weight. So if it is more, the more it is, easier the chances, the more you can lose. So that's B. C stands for C-peptide. So C-peptide is the amount of insulin you have in your body. If you have enough insulin reserve, then you are more likely to have a remission than if you don't have any insulin at all. If you're very lean, you don't have insulin, you're already having very severe diabetes, how are you going to reverse? Because you must have some insulin reserve. D stands for duration of diabetes. If your duration of diabetes is short, then you are likely to achieve remission. The longer we have calculated around 6 to 8 years, probably they can achieve remission. Maximum maybe 10 years. After 15 years, 20 years of diabetes, they start becoming more and more like type 1 diabetes. Their insulin levels keep going down. So at that stage, to achieve remission of diabetes is very difficult. So you got A, B, C, D. What is E? E is the most important. You have to be a very highly enthusiastic individual, highly motivated individual. Only such people can do that because you have to be on a very drastic diet. You're from your, say, 1,800, 2,000 calorie diet, you're going to go down now to 800 calorie diet, 700 calorie diet. It's almost like starvation, okay? And that you have to continue lifelong, okay? They'll give you a couple of, some shakes to drink. So they'll say, no, what's my meal? No, there's no meal. This is your meal, So you have one shake in the morning, one shake in the evening. That's it. For the rest of your life, you can have that shake. Nothing else you can eat, So it's such a drastic diet. Naturally, you lose weight. Naturally, your fat will disappear. Your sugar will start coming down because insulin resistance is gone. But how long will you maintain it? The moment you start eating carbs, the moment you start eating, your weight will come back, sugar will come back. Sometimes it will come back worse than what it was before. So we call it as a re-reversal. Okay, so the man who and they also think that they are totally cured. It's like saying that in heaven there is a place for you and all. That's how we preach to people. No, so like that. These reversal walas, what they do, they keep telling these people, you can have all the gulab jamuns you want, you can have all the ice creams you want. It's like paradise picture is painted to them. You will not have any medicines at all. All medicines are gone. So it's almost like going to heaven. So they enter into this program, pay huge sum of money, and they're very happy. And if one or two achieve it, they will blow it out of proportion. They'll show them on social media and they'll show them thing. The same guy, if his diabetes comes back, he's not going to come back social media. Hey, now my diabetes has come back. He's so ashamed that he won't come back and tell you that his diabetes has come back. So this is how the game is played.
Right.
So not that we don't achieve remission. We also achieve remission in about 5% of our people. We don't talk much about it because 95% are not going to achieve it. So what's the point in saying, I've got 50 people, 100 people. And most of the numbers I have seen, because I've closely followed some of these people when they write up their papers for publication, they will claim that they have 12,000, 15,000. Finally, when they write up the paper, it will be only 200. And out of the 200, if you see, the starting experience is 7.1 and or 6.8. And from there, they achieve 6.5. The remission criteria set by the American Diabetes Association is if you are taking medicines, now if your experience is below 6.5 and you're not on medication, that is remission. So suppose you had 6.6 and you put on metformin for 2 months. Now it's come to 6.4. You achieved remission now. Okay. Actually, what happened is sugar has come down by 10 milligram or 20 milligram. But these are the kind of people whom they project it and say, oh, we have achieved remission and so on. So while remission is good, it's not that we should not talk about it, but it's hard work and not all can achieve it. And I would put it the other way. If you don't achieve remission, so what happens? Okay, I've been in this game for 50 years and people have now crossed 95 years, 100 years. They've lived for 60 years with diabetes, 70 years with diabetes, and they're doing well. Okay, they've celebrated the 100th birthday. They don't have a single
So it's
complication.
absolutely possible to maintain a good quality of life even being on
Without reversal. Without
medications.
reversal. And they're
Yeah,
still on
without
medication.
reversal.
Because the other thing which all the people are told on social media is if you take your medicines, you'll develop side effects. So please don't take medicines, try for reversal. That's not true. If you take medicines in the proper dose judiciously, you can take it for 30, 40 years, nothing happens to you. Of course, you may need additional medication, you may need insulin, you may need things. But the people who have lived up to 100 years and have got a large series now who have finished 100 years of age, they're still on medication. And they've not had a single complication. Their eye, kidney, heart, feet, all are good. Their brain is good. Everything is good. So why do you need reversal? Even if you don't need get reversal, it's good enough. They've been maintaining the normal life. They've been going for walk. They've been coming for checkups. They've been taking medication, and they've lived up to 100 years of age. So we need not worry too much about reversal or remission.
Yeah, it's a lot of hype there.
One
Very
point.
interesting conversation. Yeah, please, sir. Please go
One
ahead.
point I just wanted to add, apart from what Dr. Sharda said about the insulins and all that for both for type 1 and type 2, one more advance which is coming, which will probably come by next year, is weekly insulin. So we
Yeah.
have this long-acting insulins. Usually you take it once a day, but now once a week is also coming. So for many people with type 2 diabetes, just on a Sunday you can have your insulin. The
Yeah,
whole
people, I think people world over will be waiting for it. It's a big thing, breakthrough in the pharma, which is going to happen very soon, most likely. Thank you so much, Dr. Mohan and Dr. Sharda, for joining us in this conversation. I'm sure our viewers have benefited immensely from this. Thank you so much.